Hello and welcome to the Rangers Rabble Academy review. Tonight I'm joined by Wilf. How you doing, mate?
I'm fine, Willie. Just literally just back in the door from Innerleithen, so yeah, I'm doing okay.
Good man. I know we thought maybe it was going to be 8:30, but Wilf's managed to get home a wee bit quicker, so we'll start at 8 o'clock and see how it goes. We'll just jump straight in there, chat about some recent games for the B team, some of the recent games for the under 18s, and we'll also look at some of the players that's out on loan. Maybe they've not played enough. What's their future at Rangers? So we'll just get stuck right in there. We'll start off kind of following on from the last pod. So the first game after that was Cove Rangers. That was a bit of a tough watch, Wolf, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a lesson. I mean, Cove. I've seen living up here. I've seen Cove a couple of times this season, and they're a fairly. I mean, they're a fairly good side. They've thrown a lot of money at that team. They've got. I mean, it was noticeable from the team that played against us that night in the Challenge Cup. You know, they had at least four former Premiership players in the team. You know, I mean, Shea Logan could probably still be playing. Probably the same for Fraser Fivey. You know, so it was always going to be a test for the boys, and losing two goals in the first few minutes just done them. I mean, that was it was finished after that.
Yeah, it was one of those kind of games that sort of travelling up in the car with the guys that go to a lot of the games. You're talking about you probably need a strong 15, 20 minutes to start the game off. Try and I don't know what you say, like try and get a bit of control in the game almost. But as you say, within whatever that was, 6 or 7 minutes, it was 2-0 down, and before we realised it, it was like 4-1, and kind of felt like it could have been anything after that, to be honest. And it's tough on the youngsters, but I think as we said at the game, you've got to learn tough lessons, and Cove are a good team. They're probably a team that's going to push for the championship. So in reality, you're playing against a top level League One slash bottom kind of 4 or 5 team in the championship with the quality of players they've got. And as you pointed out, they've got guys who have played at the highest level as well. So maybe it's just one of those games that the players need to put in the back of their mind and accept that at times during their career, these kind of games can happen and they just need to move on. Um, Next up, we had a game against Spartans. Obviously, that's the kind of the flip side. They're playing in the Lowland League. We won 7-1. Two from Aaron Lyle, one from Ross McCausland, Adam Devine, Charlie McCann, Juan Alegria, and Kane Richie Hosler. Is that the kind of like the ups and downs of football when you come up against a quality team like Cove and then you drop back into the Lowland League and you beat Spartans so comfortably? Is that the kind of good and bad side of this season, Wolf?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I was a bit surprised that we beat Spartans. I always consider Spartans to be a kind of better team than that. You know, I was quite surprised we took so many off them. But I mean, that's kind of regular happenings for the B team in that league. You know, I mean, it's a great experiment playing up against against men in men's football. They've taken to it really well. But it's noticeable that the difference in class between like teams like Cove and
Yeah.
teams like Spartans. Just I mean, Cove are playing in a competitive league every week. I mean that they're playing League One, and it's quite a competitive League One that they're playing in, and they're doing really well in it. So it was always going to be a challenge. Whereas Spartans are just Spartans. I mean, the Lowland League, most of the Lowland League teams shouldn't really be able to live with Rangers, because we've got the better by definition we've got better players. They're maybe a bit stronger, but technically we should be an awful lot better than most of the teams in that league.
Yeah, and I think that's the conundrum. This is why Rangers want to get the B team into League One or League Two, so that we can test ourselves and the players can understand what they need to do to get to that level. I mean, clearly Cove are a team who are backed financially, who, as you pointed out earlier on, have got guys of a very good standard at that level. They clearly want to be in the championship next season, so that's where we need to aspire to. As a B team, we need to go out there and go toe to toe with these teams. And that's what we have to do over the coming years, hopefully, if that's going to be the case, because it's no offence to the Lowland League. I mean, like, we've had some tough games during this period, but we've also had other games like the 8-2 victory against Edinburgh Uni and then the 6-0 victory today. Do you actually take anything from these kind of games in terms of like sort of player performance, in terms of positivity, or do you just see it as Rangers should be beating these teams?
No, I mean Rangers should be beating those teams, especially the likes of today. I mean they're playing bottom of the league and they beat them comfortably. You know, I mean, it's as you say, we really need to try and get Rangers into the kind of senior leagues, into the League One or League Two. And I know there's a lot of opposition to that, but they're not really learning anything playing against these teams really because they, as I say, they're technically better than them, so they should be beating them. And okay, they're beating them really really well, but I mean they should. But having said that, we've still had 2 or 3 games where we haven't played particularly well, and we've lost silly games we probably shouldn't have lost.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is we're still doing it in Europe against for probably fairly decent standard European teams. So it's all sort of swings and roundabouts, and I mean the boys are learning from it certainly.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits from this season is that the boys are seeing a different side of the game. The Lowland League at times it's not pretty. Sometimes teams have been very direct against us because we're not the biggest of teams. We've had teams that have been very physical against us because, yet again, we're maybe not the most physical team in the world. So, from that point of view, I think the players have taken certain things from each game. And I think for me, that's important. Well, the competition week to week is good enough for Rangers. That's questionable. And I think it's something that, yet again, will come up next year if we end up back in the Lowland League. Is that really the level that we want some of our young players to go at? Because that's what we're going to talk kind of later on in the pod about, maybe players that need to go out on loan who need to be pushed at a higher level, and that's something we'll get to. We'll talk about the European game against the Bulgarians, September Sofia. It was a double for Tony Weston, and I think it was Cole McKinnon with the goals. Was that an expected victory against the Bulgarians, or did you think that was just a good performance from Rangers and the Bulgarians just obviously weren't good enough to cope with that?
No, I think it's a victory I expected. I mean, obviously I didn't know the first thing about the Bulgarians, but I mean, obviously it had to be a good performance because you don't get to that stage in Europe being a bad side. So the Bulgarians had to have something about them. But again, it's probably a step up in class from most of the games that we're playing. I mean, given it came quite close on the heels of the Cove game, it was good that the Rangers team managed to pick themselves up from what was an absolute mauling in Cove.
Yeah.
To get a good result against the Bulgarians. So I expected us to win. I'm not sure I expect us to win so comfortably though.
No, I think the good thing from the European games, obviously we've not been able to get to the away games due to the kind of travel restrictions and things like that. But certainly, like the home games, the 2 home games we've played some really good football at times, and we've moved the ball really well. I think the one thing against Sofia was it was quite windy that night, and it wasn't the easiest to move the ball about, but we kept trying to do the right things, and I think that's what was important. And looking back at that, I mean, including some of the other games we're going to talk about, that's Tony Weston now hit 30 goals this season. So I want to ask you, is 30 goals in the Lowland League a good level for Tony in terms of that goals, or is it more important that maybe he went to somebody like a Cove and scored 10 goals in the next part of the season? Do you think that would mean more than the 30 in the Lowland League?
I think it probably would because he'll be playing at a higher level against a better standard of defender. I mean, you've got to look at. Tony doesn't even play particularly as a centre forward. He scored a lot of those goals from midfield. I mean that's an incredible return at any level from the position that he's playing. But I mean, he could score 30. He could up that to 40 goals, and it wouldn't have the same gravitas of scoring maybe 10 or 15 as you say at a Cove or at a maybe even at an Arbroath or that sort of level that are doing quite well at the level they're at. I mean, Arbroath might be too much for them because they're top of the championship, but something like that, Kelty Hearts perhaps. A team that you need to go to a team that are doing well in their division. There'd be no point in putting them at somebody that's fighting relegation. That wouldn't do Tony any good at all. He'd be better staying where he is if that was the only option.
Yeah, there's a wee question in there from Curry Muncher. He's saying he's a bit concerned about your remarks a couple of weeks ago that the current B team maybe don't have any players ready to step into the first team. Is that due to the youth policy, or is it just due to 0 players being ready? I think what Wilf meant by that is it's tough to go from the Lowland League into the first team in the Premier League. I certainly don't think it's a lack of quality. No. Because there's some very exciting players in that B team. But you're talking about jumping up League 2, League 1, Championship, Prem. It's a big step up, and this is why we're going to kind of get into depth a wee bit about some players that need to go out and loan. Is there anybody in that team today, when you look at it, or some of the other games you've been at, that think they need to go out and loan because we need to see if they can cope at that higher level?
Yeah, I mean, what guys have to remember is that the B team, it's not a reserves team; it's a team full of kids. They're all under 20s, more or less. So they have got still a lot of. I mean, most of them, a lot of them are 17, 18-year old. They've got a lot of development to do, and it's a fine balance because obviously they want the whole B team thing. They want people to go and see them, and by the very nature of Rangers support, they're only going to get a crowd if they start winning things or start
Yeah.
winning games and stuff. So if they put all the better players, if you like, out on loan and started getting scudded every week, nobody would go. You'd obviously go and see them every week. I'd go and see them when I can, but a lot of people that are kind of are casually observing the B team wouldn't go and see them. So it is a difficult balancing act, and you need to also put them to get games. I mean, right now you've got guys like Tony Weston, playing every single week for us, or more or less every week for us again, missing the odd game here and there. But if they went out on loan to maybe, as you say, maybe a Cove or a Kelty Hearts, would they play every week? And they need to be playing every week for their own development. So it's not, as you say, it's not the lack of quality, but it is a hell of a jump up from. I mean, a few weeks ago when we weren't scoring goals and Juan Allegri got a hat trick and everybody seen get him in the first team, you couldn't do that. It just wouldn't work. But I mean, hopefully sooner rather than later they'll bring back the 5 subs, and that would be an absolute godsend for the young guys, because then you could have them sitting on the bench. We were talking about this today at half time. You could have them possibly on the bench and say, right, okay, you're 2-0 up against St Mirren with half an hour to go. You could throw on one of the younger players.
Yeah.
But as it is, when you've only got 3 subs, you can't do that, because if somebody gets injured, then you've limited your possibilities.
Here's a wee quick question for you, Wilf. One that I think you'll quite enjoy, because it's one that I think we've all spoken about at the Academy games. Will any of the B team players get minutes in the first team this season, maybe looking at the Cup game in a couple of weeks' time? Do you think there's anybody in that group at the moment that you would like to see get some minutes in that Cup game?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to see Alex Lowry getting a shot. I mean, he's
Right, okay.
He's playing really. I mean, he played my man of the match today by a mile. I mean, I thought he played really, really well. The problem that he's got is the position that he plays. He wouldn't get a regular game in the first team because of the players that play a similar position to him. Where he plays. You could argue Leon King could do with another shot, because we're a bit light at the back, and Leon King does well at the back. Again, today you couldn't really tell how good or bad he was, because he didn't have any defending to do. But I mean, guys like that, yeah, I would certainly look at giving him a shot, not necessarily just in the Stirling Albion game. But as I say, the fact that we're back to 3 subs isn't doing him any favours, because you probably wouldn't start any of them, but you could bring them on when a game's sort of relatively comfortable.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very valid point. The one about Alex. Alex is one of these guys, whenever you've watched him play, even if it's just one game, he generally does something in the game to excite you. He's got the tricks, he's got the ability to score ridiculous goals. He's technically very gifted, clearly. And he is a kid that I think a lot of people who've watched the Academy players over the last year or two think that he's got a real chance. And yet again, the club, in my eyes, I think that was one of the criticisms of Gerrard, and rightly so at times, that maybe we didn't, sort of give enough young players a chance. So I think under Van Bronckhorst, given some of the people that's now been added to his backroom staff, and obviously the talk that Zeb Jacobs is going to be coming in the 1st of January, I would like to think this is a small opening almost for us to start promoting more players into the first team. And I do understand people's sort of reluctance at times to do it, because obviously winning on the pitch is obviously important, but we obviously have spent a lot of money on the academy. We spent a lot of money, sort of keeping some of our best young players at the football club. So it's important that we show these guys a pathway into the first team. And Leon's definitely one of those. He's obviously out of contract in the summer of 2022. I would very much like him to stay. I think he's a super talented kid. But yeah, again, just like at every club, you need to show them a pathway, and you need to show them that the first team is going to be available to them. And Alex is the same, and so is many other players. So I certainly hope in that cup game that we can maybe see 2 or 3 or 4 guys on the bench, or maybe even one of them starting. I think that's really important, that we show that we are going to give young players a chance, So we'll just need to wait and see on that one. One of the other games I wanted to talk to you about with the B team was the game against East Kilbride, leading 1-0, playing against 10 men, and we lost 2-1. Was that maybe just one of those games where the experience East Kilbride showed, and maybe our kind of, I don't know if the word like sort of immaturity is right, or kind of lack of experience, like not getting over the line showed?
Yeah, I never actually saw the East Kilbride game, but I mean, from what I read about it and what I've heard about it, yeah, that's it exactly. I mean, 1 up against 10 men. I don't know whether it's the kind of thought the job was done. The game was done. We're 1 up. We've got an extra man. We'll just see it out, and they conceded a couple of goals late on to lose the game. It probably was just inexperience, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, well, I think for these guys, it's important. Also, East Kilbride have obviously got a lot of seasoned professionals in that group, but you just think that when you're 1-0 up, you're playing against 10 men, you should be good enough, to see the game through. Maybe that was a bit of naivety. That's something we need to get better at against stronger opposition. Some of the other results we'll just kind of go through quickly because we're kind of good halfway through the pod now. 3-0 victory against Partick Thistle in the Glasgow Cup. Ross McCausland with 1 and Juan Alegria with 2. So that was a good start to the Glasgow Cup campaign. I think up next it's due to be Celtic, but yet again, the way things are at the moment, I don't know how that's going to work. And obviously we kind of hit on it earlier, the 8-2 victory against Edinburgh Uni, a hat-trick for Charlie McCann, a hat-trick for Tony Weston, Chris McKee and Robbie Ewer with the goals. We'll just kind of flick through the 18s results and then we'll have a look at the kind of loan players. We'll try and answer some questions as well on the chat. Some of the recent results for the under-18s since the last pod was a 12-1 victory against Elgin. That was a Scottish Youth Cup tie. Obviously quite one-sided, the fact it was 12-1. Greg Allen, Mackenzie Strachan, Robbie Ewer with a double, Leighton Dunlop, Tyler Pasnick, Jack Roberts with 2, Kelsey Ewan, Rory Wilson with 2, and Christian Webster with the goals. I'm glad I wrote all that down because I would never have remembered all the goal scorers in a 12-1 win, And then a result that was probably a bit of a surprise, a 6-1 victory against Hearts. Hearts had been playing quite well up to that point. I think they'd won like 5, 6, 7 games in the trot, so to beat them 6-1, but I think, to be fair, that was maybe one of our best performances that I've seen from the guys this season. A hat-trick for Rory Wilson, James Graham, Charlie Lindsay and Connor Allen with the goals. We then beat St Mirren 1-0 in it was a bounce game really, but Jack Roberts got the goal. We beat Mullowell 2-1 away from home. Robbie Ewer and Rory Wilson from the penalty spot. That was a tough night that night. It was really, really cold. It was quite a kind of chilly one in terms of like the wind was kind of cutting, so I thought that was a really good win for us. A 1-0 victory against Hearts. That was the same night as the Glasgow Cup tie. Robbie Ewer got the only goal, and then most recently a 1-1 draw with Dundee United away from home. Dundee United are quite a strong team this season, so I think overall that 1-1 draw with Robbie Ewer's goal was actually quite a decent result. I think the guys are still sitting at the top of the league the last time I checked. Hibs have got quite a few games in hand, so they could overtake us, but I think they've got something ridiculous like 5 games in hand. And given the way the world is at the moment, you just don't know if they're ever going to be able to catch those games up. Okay, the kind of main part of the pod tonight was to talk about players out on loan, players who maybe need to go out on loan. So a lot of the chat, obviously, recently, Ben Williamson potentially returning from his loan at Livingston because he's not been playing enough, and talk of him going to Raith Rovers. What do you make of that one, Wilf?
Yeah, I think he's not been playing at Livingston. I mean, he seemed to be playing for Livingston at the start of the season, and then I think he got himself. I remember he got himself sent off, and I don't think he's been back in the team since. Yeah. So I mean, if they're not going to be playing him, or as well taking him back and putting him somebody who'll get games. I mean, okay, it's stepping back down a level, but there's not that much difference really between Livingston and Raith Rovers, particularly. I mean, I was surprised he went to Livingston in the first place because of the state of that pitch. I mean, that pitch is awful. You can't really judge how well anybody's getting on playing on that thing. But he needs to go somewhere where he's playing regularly, because if he's not playing at Livingston, he's as well sitting at Rangers not playing. And at least in that we could play him possibly in some of the Glasgow Cup games or whatever. If he was still with us. But if they're taking him back to put him straight out on loan, and there's some assurances for Raith that he'll get games, then it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. I think the thing with Ben, I think he went through a wee spell where I think there was like COVID related issues, and then the red card I think happened pretty quickly, so it seemed to kind of spiral from there. I think for me it's important that Ben Gis keeps playing, so like the recall option in January and sending him out to the Championship where he did really well with Arbroath just makes a hell of a lot of sense really. So hopefully Ben can kick on and play a lot of games between now and the end of the season. James Maxwell, obviously there's been a bit of chat about James. It certainly sounds like James is going to be leaving the club in the summer or possibly in the January window. To me, that's a disappointing way for James to go. I think James has come a long way since he signed for the club, and he's done really well at under 18s and in the reserves. You know, he's moved from like kind of left wing to left back, and this season at Ayr he seems to have played about 3 or 4 different positions. He seems to have been all over the place. So, in terms of James, do you think it's important now when you get to a certain age, say 20, that you do go and play regularly somewhere else, or do you think you should try and fight it out with State Rangers?
No, I think at that sort of age, if they haven't made it, there's not really anywhere they can go because there isn't a reserve league. You know, the B teams I think is it under 20s or 20s and under. So there's not really a lot of scope for a lot of games. So
Yeah.
you can continually go out on loan, but if you can get himself fixed up with a club, I mean, there's a lot of guys I think that are in the current kind of B team and under 18s that are in the same boat. They maybe won't make it with us, but they will have a good career somewhere, and they maybe have to bite the bullet and just say, look, I'm going to go. I mean, if he's comfortable at Ayr and Ayr come in for him, for example, in James's case, you know, if they were to come in and offer him maybe a 2 or 3 year contract, he'd be daft not to take it. Yeah. Because he's all that's going to happen to the Rangers is he's going to keep going out on loan, and that really doesn't do his career any good.
No, I think the thing with James is, you know, he's obviously had interest in him in the past from like sort of Premier League clubs. I think there's been clubs in England that showed an interest in him before he signed for Rangers. So I dare say he's probably still on the radar of a lot of these clubs. For James, it's probably looking at what's the best option for him. As you're saying, if he can get that security, that's a big deal for any professional footballer, getting security. If he can get a 2 or 3 year deal, it might be something he looks at. Or he could look at even just seeing out his contract until the summer and then seeing what's available. Then it might be that there's more options in the summer. We'll obviously need to wait and see on that one, but obviously want to wish James all the best if he does leave in January. You know, he's a really good lad. You know, managed to have him on one of the pods not that long ago. We did an interview with him. Thought he was very honest in terms of his time at Rangers and what he was trying to achieve in his career. And I think, as I've said on here 100 times, it's not always just about being at Rangers. It's about a person's career. You know, not everybody's going to make it at Rangers, and that's not because of a lack of ability or whatever. It's just that sometimes you need to move on for the benefit of your career, as many other players have in the past and went on to have good careers. So whatever happens with James, I want to wish him all the best. He's a great lad. Josh McPake, another one a bit like Ben, went to Morecambe, seemed to start off well. I think he's had a few injuries. Seems like Rangers are going to recall him, and it's talk about him going to back to kind of League 2 again. I think Tranmere was one of the teams that were spoken about. What do you make of that move, Wilf?
I think it's getting to the time that they have to make a decision on Josh. You know, because he's not really recovered. He had a quite disastrous loan, or quite poor loan. I think was it at Dundee that he had a fairly poor loan. He had a poor loan somewhere in Scotland, I seem to remember, and a couple of years ago, and he's not really kicked on from there. So again, he could be recalled, stuck back on loan to Tranmere. If that doesn't really work out for him, I think he's probably going to have to, unfortunately, you know, count his losses at Rangers and just move on. But the whole academy thing, to me, it's okay. We want to get players to come through in the Rangers first team, as Nathan Patterson has. We want to get guys to do that, but we also want other guys to go on and have careers, maybe decent careers elsewhere, because that helps the name of the academy as well. You know, and you'll get guys saying, okay, I'll go to Rangers, and if I make it with them, great. But if I don't make it with them, I will make it. I'll go somewhere else and make it. Yeah. You know, that does well, and that's how I think that's how the academy model's supposed to work. You know, I mean, you're saying about James maybe seeing out James Maxwell maybe seeing out his contract. It might help him and the club if he was to leave in January. You know, we maybe got a couple of quid for him. You know, so that means he's basically funded his own time through the academy with the transfer. If he sees his contract out and goes, fair enough. That's the way of the world. But that's the way these things have to work. Josh might be the same sort of boat. He might have to, you know, maybe go to Tranmere and see where he goes after that. I don't know how long he's got left in his contract, but, you know, see what happens to him after that. But it's not going to do his career any good going half a season here, half a season there, because he's just, I don't think there's anywhere back for him at Rangers. I don't think I don't think he'll make it with us, unfortunately.
No, Josh was one of those guys at 16, 17 that just looked like he was going to be a superstar. All the ability in the world. I think injuries and obviously that. I think we spoke about it in one of the earlier pods. The move to Dundee probably didn't work out quite as well as he would have liked, and I think that did hit him a little bit. I think that kind of gave him a bit of a done. So when he come back, he probably didn't hit the same levels that he had before. Yet again, Josh is one of those kids who'll have a career in football. I've absolutely no doubt about it. It just depends what level it'll be at. One of the questions there about Leon King. Leon's out of contract in the summer of 2022, Chris. I think the club are obviously in discussions with Leon, as they are with many other players who are out of contract in the summer. Hopefully Leon decides to stay at Rangers. I think, as I've said before, I've never had, how much I rate Leon. I think Leon's a cracking footballer, technically very gifted, can play in that holding midfield role or central defence. We've obviously used him as a fullback a couple of times when he's come on for the first team. But Leon's got a real chance at Rangers. I mean, we shouldn't really kind of go too far because we don't want to kind of like sort of over-egg players, but Leon's got a chance. I think anybody that's watched Leon would tell you that. So hopefully over the coming weeks and months, Leon's one of many that signs a new contract and we can move forward with the best young academy players that we've got at the club. We'll come on to Kai Kennedy. Kai's another one. He's obviously had several loans now. The move to Dunfermline, obviously there's been a change of manager and he's been on the bench quite a few times. What's the future for Kai, Wilf? Where do you see that happening? And can I move
I don't know. I thought Dunfermline was a great move for him, and it seemed to be, until the change of manager. And I feel for any player that's out on loan when the manager changes at the club they've gone on loan to, because they've obviously gone on loan to play for a manager that fancies them, and then the new guy comes in and he might not, or he might just say, well, I've only got you here for a prescribed amount of time. I'm going to work with guys that I know I'm going to have a kind of long term future with. I think we could possibly do with recalling him and putting him out somewhere else, because Kai's he's a great talent, a really really good talent. But again, he really needs a good 6 months between now and the end of the season just to see where we are with him.
Yeah, I think for me, when Kai went out and loaned to Dunfermline, it seemed like a good move because they were a club that had obviously added some good players over the summer. Obviously, for the previous manager, it didn't really work out very well. I think that's fair to say.
But
I mean, John Hughes came in, you sort of looked at that and thought, that could be great for Kai because he's quite an expansive attacking manager. And it felt like that was like a bit of luck for Kai. But he seems to have been in and out of the starting 11. I don't know the whole issue. Maybe there's some injuries there or whatever. But it just kind of feels like for Kai, he needs to find a place that he's going to play every week. He's another one of those guys that ability-wise, it's not in question. But can he play for 6, 7, 8, 9 months consistently at that level? Because that's what you need to show. I mean, Stephen Kelly did it at Ayr United, and then he went out to Ross County and did well. So you need to show those levels before you go to the next one. And I think that's obviously the worry a little bit at the moment, is that some loans haven't worked out quite as well as they would have liked. I mean, I think this is a fair question from Chris, actually, and I really like it. Do you think Gio would send some players out and loan to Holland? Wolf, is this something that we miss out on in Scotland, that maybe we are quite kind of short-sighted in things, that, let's just send guys out here, let's just send guys out here in Scotland, rather than maybe looking at some of the moves abroad?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, we've started putting boys down south, which we never used to do. One or two have gone down, as you say. Josh McPake went down south for a loan spell, and I don't think it would hurt. It would certainly give them a bit more experience of a different type of football.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of our players are technically gifted. Well, the Dutch league's quite a technical league. I think the Belgian league's much the same. It would certainly do them no harm at all. It would also get them out of the Scottish bubble, if you like.
Yeah.
And they'd have to grow up a bit, and we could see what these young guys are made of. So it's not the daftest idea I've ever seen.
Do you think, obviously, with Zeb Jacobs coming in from Belgium, with Dave Ross coming in from Holland, do you think that now opens up a different avenue to send players out on loan, that these guys could put forward a good word for these young players, and maybe a move to, maybe the Belgium second division or the Dutch second division, whatever it may be, would benefit players more than say a loan to somebody in League One?
Yeah, absolutely would, because they'll obviously have the contacts out there. They've worked at clubs in the Benelux area, and they'll know the managers and the coaches, and they'll be able to look. We've got this young player, might be able to do a wee turn for you, and stick them in. And it's not as physical out there. I don't think. I don't really watch a lot of Dutch and Belgian football, but I don't think it can't possibly be as physical as some of the stuff we get up against. So it's going to benefit the players because their technical abilities, in no doubt at all, but it'll, they'll be able to hone those skills while playing at a decent level against men. So I think it's an absolutely fantastic idea.
Yeah. All right, I'll come to you for the last kind of couple of minutes. Just a couple of quick questions. Who would you like to see go out and loan from the B team, and what level would you like to see them go to? So I'll come to you first on Charlie McCann. Do you think Charlie McCann, maybe needs to go to the Scottish Championship, or do you think maybe a move back to England on loan would be beneficial for him?
I think Charlie does need to go out on loan, and I think he would do well in the Scottish Championship. But as would be the same with all our loan players at that level, that he'd be a target because of who his parent club are.
Yeah.
You get a lot of these guys at that level are sort of, well, he's the guy from Rangers. I'm going to make a name for myself. I'm going to stick one on him. And it's not really the way to look at it, but I think that's the case a lot of times with these guys. So it may well be maybe League One in England, somebody, but again, it need to be somebody that a team that's kind of challenging, that's winning most weeks, but that would also play him on a regular basis. There'd be no point in sticking it with a team that's fighting relegation, because he won't learn anything there. He won't. He needs a team that's going to have quite a lot of the ball and be attacking a lot of the time to suit the kind of style of play he's got.
Right. Obviously, we've already spoke about Tony Weston, so we'll not go over that ground again. Somebody like Alex Lowry, obviously you would like to see him in the first team, maybe playing in that cup game potentially. If Alex is going out on loan, what kind of club do you need for Alex? Do you need a certain type of club that play a certain type of way, or is that just up to Alex to fit into that team, whether it's as a number 8 and a number 10?
I think it's up to Alex to fit into the team, but I mean, for a team to take him, they need, they'll obviously know what sort of player he is, and have a space for him. I mean, it's the same sort of thing as Charlie McCann. The level would be similar, and I think Alex Lowry would be a great case in point to maybe stick to the Dutch second division or the bottom, right. or maybe kind of I don't know the quality of the team mid-table era division. I don't know whether that would maybe just be beyond them a little bit, but I mean certainly, trying to get him over to a team that's maybe fighting for promotion out of the second division in Holland. I think he would really excel in that sort of level.
This is one of the kind of points from Graham, and it's a fair one because also other people are allowed their opinion. I don't like these loans to smaller clubs or lower leagues. You're giving them time to apply their craft at a smaller club, lower level. Useless experience for when they pull on the blue jersey. What is the fine line in loaning somebody out to gain that experience, or is it more important that you test them at first team level quicker? What do you think is the kind of middle ground on that?
I think it's getting them experience against experienced players, against physical players. I mean, again, as I said earlier, what you've got to remember, these are only boys. They're only, they're 17, 18, 19-year-old boys. And it would be great to say, look, loan them out to Ross County, St Mirren, Livingston, St Johnstone, teams like that, so that. But I don't think they play regularly in these teams, because these teams don't play a lot of football. They need to play for clubs, for me, and they need to go to clubs who actually play a bit of football, that don't just. I mean, there's no point in loaning their midfield players out to a team that don't put the ball through midfield.
Yeah.
I mean, to lift it up a level, look at Scott Wright. Scott Wright at Aberdeen was a decent player, but nobody realised how good a player he was because they didn't use him. They threw the ball over his head all the time.
Yeah.
There's no point in putting Tony West into St Johnstone, for example, and he's standing with a sore neck looking at the ball above his head all the time. That'll do the boy no good at all. It'll get him minutes, and it'll get him up against, but he'll never see the ball. You'll not be able to see what he can do. Yeah. So they might need to go to a more technical league, to get the time on, because they need to have the time on the ball so that we can see what they can do. Yeah. And these leagues they're up against seasons pros. I mean, where they are just now, like say when they played against Cove,
Course,
they were up against guys that have played the game at a decent level,
yeah.
and that's the sort of game. And okay, they might struggle, but they'll learn lots. They'll learn more from. Probably learn more from getting beat 5-1 by Cove than they did from beating Vale Leith in 6-0 today.
Yeah.
Because they're up against physical players.
There's a quick point about somebody obviously talking about Barry Ferguson there. Did Barry Ferguson ever go out on loan? I mean, yeah, again, that's the other side of the argument. Do you need to send players out on loan? Because, I mean, obviously, if you guys like Alan McGregor, he did a double loan stint. Charlie Adam obviously did a loan stint before he made it in the first team. But then you've had Nathan Patterson, who's just come straight into the first team. So, is every player different? And sometimes they just need a loan, and some players don't.
Yeah, I think we're a difficult support as well. I mean, I'm gonna have this discussion with my missus who was at the game with me today. I mean, obviously, as we all know, she's a Jambo, and she was quite impressed with Alex Lowry today as well, just as a side point. But yeah, I mean, the difference is teams like Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen.
Yeah.
They're not expected. Their fans don't expect them to win every single week and win well every week. We do. We don't cut anybody any slack at all.
No.
When they come into the team, if they make a couple of mistakes, it's shite, get them out. So you've got to be very, very careful bringing the young players in. But I mean, hopefully, as I say, they bring in this 5 substitutions and we can give them a bit of game time and see what they've got.
William, I hope you don't mind me jumping in for 2 quick seconds.
Of course, mate, fire away.
It's obviously this is your show and you're my boss, so I don't want to upset you. I won't obviously be on again until Hogmanay. So I just thought I would take this opportunity. We released obviously some news today on Twitter that I done a 2-hour interview with the Overlord from Heart and Hand, David Edgar. That interview will be available to YouTube members and Patreon subscribers on New Year's Day. If, however, you are part of our Rabble CEO membership on YouTube, or you're part of our Rabble Legend subscription on Patreon, the interview will be available from tomorrow morning. Please do check if you're signing up to YouTube, and this is a point I have to make very, very clear. When you're signing up to a membership on YouTube, please read the descriptions of those memberships and make sure it's the right one for you. Because I know, William, a lot of people don't have Twitter. And that's the only way sometimes to get a hold of the people, especially people that watch on YouTube, because I see likes a CGM, Curry Muncher, RFC 56, Aldo. That's for usual contributors. So I just thought I would jump on and just thank everybody as well, because the memberships have been through the roof. It's crazy, it's brilliant. Thank you very much. Apologies for interrupting, William. I shall let you get back to your academy update.
Top man, cheers. As Martin does, he likes to jump on it, things, doesn't he? Well, if he gets right to do
he does,
in there.
Yep.
But no, look, I think, in a serious note, for me, obviously doing the academy pod, it's something I love doing. When I get to the games, not as much as I used to do because of like my new job and things like that, it makes it slightly more difficult. But, anybody that's got a passion, in life, whether it's football or tennis or badminton or whatever you'd like to do, enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy watching the lads play. I enjoy whenever they get that opportunity to play for the first team. I would like to think that every Rangers fan takes a certain degree of enjoyment when they see a young player break into the first team, because as we always go on about, we love to see our own guys making that breakthrough, and it's great when you see like Alan McGregor, he's had to do it, Alan Hutton, Charlie Adam, just to name a few. I mean, we could go through another 30, 40 guys here, obviously, but it's important that we do have a pathway, and I think as a football club our size and the money that we put into the academy, that we do that. I'll leave the last word to you, Wilf. What would you like to see in the second half of the season in terms of player development from the youth team and into the first team? And give us a name of a player that you think will make an impression, if not this season, next season.
I'd like to see some of the guys that are featuring predominantly for the B team given a chance in the first team, but for that to happen, I think we really need to push on and have the league basically sewn up as early as possible, and hopefully by like what used to always happen under Walter Smith in his first stint, come the last half a dozen games of the season, the league's won, and you see some young getting a bit of game time here and there in games that I'm not saying they don't matter, because every game matters, but in games that the results kind of secondary, really gives these guys a bit of game time. And I mean, I'd love to see guys like Charlie McCann, Leon King, Alex Lowry getting a chance, in the first team towards. And I mean, that's the guys I think will make an impression in the team, I mean, for me, looking at today's game, a special mention for me today for the young lad at centre half. Connor Allen, the young lad that's saying he's only 16,
Yeah.
17-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, he had absolutely no defending to do today, but he did everything. He never wasted a pass. Did everything absolutely simply. So what they're getting taught properly. It's good. It's good to see he didn't waste a pass. He was never under pressure. So I don't know what he's like as a defender because he didn't have to defend. But I mean that to me is really encouraging. A guy of that age. I mean you reeled off the 18s, the goal scorers in the under 18s games. Half of the ones that are scoring goals in the 18s are playing for the B team, which means it's a very, very young B team, which is great going forward because the players, it means they could be in the B team for the next kind of 2 or 3 years, which has got to be encouraging going forward because they're playing at a really, really decent level. They're second top of a quite competitive lowland league against men, and it's basically literally as men against boys a lot of the time. So that's really encouraging for the academy going forward. But I mean, to go back to your questions, I think I'd like to see guys like Alex Lowry and Tony Weston going out on decent loans. But having said that, I'd also love to see us win this Lowland League, and we'd need them to do that. So it's a difficult one for the coaching staff to square, really.
Yeah, I mean, just get over your point there quickly. You've got Robbie Ewer. He scored 13 goals for the B team this season and 11 for the under 18s. So it shows, like he's done it at both levels this season, Robbie Ewer.
Yeah.
And that's something that obviously is important because you want to see that progression. Yeah, look, somebody like Connor Allen, he's actually a midfield player, Connor.
Really?
But he's been playing centre back for the under 18s recently because he's had a few injuries. I mean, Connor's basically a guy that was playing like school football almost, and then he came into Rangers and he's just made a great impression. You've got Tyler Pasnick, who I think is still only 16. He came on the pitch today. Leighton Dunlop, he's only 17. I think that's what's more important for us in the Lowland League, is that we give 16, 17-year-olds a chance to play. Because I don't know what you learn sometimes from somebody that's 19 or 20. I think you'll learn a hell of a lot more from somebody that's 16 or 17 who's been pushed to learn more, to learn quicker. I mean, Greg Allen's obviously had some time this season. He's only 16. We signed him from Hearts. He's had some B team action this season. He's made mistakes, but you know what? You'll learn from it because you'll know not to do it again.
But that's my whole point with trying to get back to 5 subs like we had last year. You can have, noticeable today, as you say, the 2 young lads came on near the end, and the bench was really young today.
Yeah.
We can afford to do that for first team games. Yeah. And if they have to sit there because the team's told to put the game to bed, then they just sit there. But they've got the experience of travelling with the first team and doing all the preparation. But if the game is out of sight, we're fairly comfortable, you can put them on because you've got those extra couple of subs. That's everybody's saying. If they do the 5 subs, Rangers and Celtic will benefit because they've got stronger squads. Yeah, they will from that point of view. But it also means we can bring the kids through. Bring the young players, give them a bit of game time. Like you look at a European bench, there's always a couple of young boys on a European bench because there has to be because of the homegrown nature of the European rules. You could do that domestically, and it would give these guys a great experience, absolutely phenomenal experience, and that can only help the Scottish game going forward. So why they haven't done it already, I've got absolutely no idea. And it would work the same way as the B team's working, with the 16 and 17-year-olds on the bench, bringing them on when the game's quite comfortable.
Right, well that'll do us for tonight. That's about 45 minutes. We normally only do about 30-35, but there were so many questions to answer. Absolutely loved it. We're going to do a review of 2021 in January of 2022 when we get a couple of minutes spare to ourselves. So if you look out for that, we're going to do a review in January. Since the first team don't come back until whatever that is, the 17th, we'll try and do it before then. If anybody's got any questions you want to ask, feel free to send me on Twitter at RFC Youth Updates. I'm always happy to try and answer them the best I can. We're going to maybe be a wee bit controversial in the pod next up in January because we've got to look at the club and say, are some of the decisions being made right in terms of some of the loans coming in, some of the loans going out? These are things we'll talk about. It's all about opinions, as I say. Not everybody's always going to agree. That's the way of the world, especially when it comes to football. So look forward to that. Just want to say thanks very much to everybody that's joined us this year, especially on the Academy pods. It's been great to see the numbers go up and up and up. I can tell a lot of guys are passionate about football just like I am. I look forward to seeing you all again in January. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and have a great New Year, guys. All the best. And hopefully 2021 is a good one for all us Rangers fans. Take care of yourselves and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye.